I flew thousands of miles to tell my husband I was pregnant. But when I opened the apartment door, I froze. My husband was in bed with another woman. If it were you, standing there, watching the man you call husband shielding his mistress from your own eyes, would you feel pain, anger, or laugh like I did? Leave a comment below. I'll read them all. Because maybe, in your story, I'll find a piece of my own. Seeing Daniel, my husband, lying in bed with a strange woman right before my eyes, I was still too stunned to speak. Even though the moment I stepped into this apartment, I already had a feeling. A pair of unfamiliar red high heels was placed neatly by the door, burning like a challenge. On the shoe rack, a designer leather handbag dangled, unfamiliar and expensive. Maybe they heard the door open, because the sweet laughter from the bedroom suddenly cut off. I walked toward the bedroom, door wide open. Daniel was lying there, back resting against the headboard, cigarette between his fingers, ash falling into the tray like gray-white bits of every lie he ever told me. He wore a white shirt, unbuttoned, hair messy, but his eyes were cold, indifferent. The girl curled into his chest, wrapped in a thin blanket, only her long hair and bare shoulders visible. She didn't dare look at me, eyes cast down, avoiding, as if my stare could burn. But I didn't care about her. She wasn't the one I once trusted, once loved, once believed would walk through the years beside me. Daniel lifted his head, met my eyes with a terrifying calm, like a lake with no ripples. He stubbed out the cigarette slowly, lazily. "Why are you here?" His voice was hoarse, not from panic, but from inconvenience, like I was some uninvited disruption. "Why didn't you call first?" Those words hit like a punch, not hard, but enough to knock the breath out of me. My chest tightened, like all the air had been sucked away. So now, to see my own husband, I needed permission? So this house, my house, had no space left for me? I hid my trembling hands behind my back, fingers digging into each other, trying to keep them from revealing the pain rising inside me. I looked straight into his eyes, jaw clenched, forcing a sentence through my parched throat. "Do you even know what you're doing?" The moment I asked that question, I realized how ridiculous I was. Of course he knew. He knew exactly what he was doing, more than I had ever imagined. I shifted my gaze to the girl. Maybe his indifference had emboldened her. She lifted her head, and our eyes met. Just for a second, but it was enough. Not fear, not shame, but a flicker of defiance, like she was sizing me up, waiting to see what I'd do next. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice cold, but quivering slightly, like a guitar string pulled too tight. Before the words even finished leaving my mouth, Daniel's arm shot out like a reflex. He pulled her behind him, shielding her from my stare like I was a threat. For the first time, his face showed something, not guilt, but defense. "Emma, don't take it out on her," he said, voice low but sharp. "This is my fault." I caused it. I'll take responsibility. He stepped off the bed, bare feet hitting the floor with a soft but echoing thud in the silence of the room. He opened the closet, rummaged a bit, then pulled out a brand new silk dress, the price tag still swinging. He held it out to her, his voice tender, indulgent, like I wasn't even there. "Here, put this on," he murmured. "Go on home. I'll come to you soon." She nodded, timidly, but her eyes gleamed with a hint of triumph as she took the dress. She turned away, pulling it over her body slowly, as if trying to stretch out the moment. Daniel zipped the back of her dress himself, his fingers gliding down her back, gentle, intimate. I stood there watching them, and suddenly I laughed. A dry, sharp laugh, like glass shattering. Tears threatened to spill, but I didn't let them. Not here, not in front of him. I looked away from them, turned around, and walked straight to the balcony. The window was wide open, and hot air rushed against my face. The excitement I felt stepping onto the plane, the surprise gift I had brought for Daniel, it all vanished with the wind, as if it never existed. I stood gripping the railing, fingernails scraping against the chipped paint, searching for something solid to hold onto in the storm inside me. Footsteps echoed behind me. Daniel was walking her to the door. I heard him saying something, softly, gently, the way he used to speak to me in another lifetime. The front door opened, then shut with a dry thud. I heard the elevator ding, then silence. He returned. I could feel him there, even without turning around. He cleared his throat, breaking the stillness. "Emma, let's talk," he said, his voice flat, like he was negotiating a contract. He leaned back on the sofa, lit a fresh cigarette. Smoke drifted, hazy, blurring his eyes. When he mentioned her, the corners of his mouth lifted, dreamy, like a boy who had just fallen in love. "I'm exhausted," he said, voice feather light. "If I hadn't met Ashley, I don't think I would have made it this far." He kept going, steady, like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. "Emma, there hasn't been love between us for a long time." "Let's stop this," that "let's stop this" sounded so casual, like wiping away 10 years together. 4 years dating, 6 years married. The same man who once held my hand under moonlight, careful, hesitant, had grown up, changed, become a stranger. "There are no kids right now," he said, tone serious, almost cold. "You and I, we can both start over." He looked at me, eyes unwavering, like he had made his decision long ago, and I was just the last to be told. The cigarette burned out, its red tip fading. He stood, picked up his car keys. Before stepping out the door, he glanced at me, briefly. "Think it over carefully," he said quietly, like he was offering me kindness. "I'll try to make it up to you." Act 3. Daniel left, and the sound of the door closing echoed. Dry, hollow. I stood still in the living room, for a long, long time, as if my feet were nailed to the cold wooden floor. I didn't sit on the sofa. It felt dirty, tainted by the smell of cigarettes, by her presence, by the way Daniel had leaned against it, smiling dreamily when he mentioned Ashley. This room, there was nothing here that belonged to me anymore. I glanced around. The teddy bear that used to lie at the head of the bed, the nightgown that once hung in the closet, the jar of moisturizer in the bathroom, all of it gone, as if Daniel had carefully erased every trace of me. Everything had been tidied up so neatly, like I had never existed in his world. I gripped my phone tightly, fingers trembling slightly as they touched the screen. The voice recording was still there, capturing every word he'd said, every sound of betrayal. I turned it off, then raised the phone and took a few photos. The messy bed, the ashtray full of cigarette butts, the silk dress lying crumpled on the floor. I turned and walked out of the apartment, slid into the driver's seat. On the passenger seat, the ultrasound report from the hospital still sat there. It was supposed to be a surprise for Daniel, a piece of joyful news I'd planned to share. Just this morning, after my hospital visit, I'd called him multiple times, excited. He didn't pick up, not once. I thought he was busy, thought maybe work had swept him away. I took a day off, flew straight from California to New York, just to tell him myself, to see the smile on his face when he found out we were going to have a family. But now, looking at the file folder, I knew he would never see it. And maybe it didn't even matter anymore. Looking back, the signs had been there all along. When he started coming home less often, when he silenced his phone mid-ring, when the business trips stretched longer with no explanation. The year we were about to get married, his job suddenly relocated to another city. He held me, his voice soft, patient. "Emma, can you trust me?" I didn't. I never believed in long-distance love, but he promised. He'd deposit money into our joint account, come home every weekend, FaceTime so I'd know he was still there. For his career, for our future, I compromised. Daniel said he was tired. But what about me? I was tired too. When we were renovating the new house, fighting tooth and nail with the construction crew, he had no idea. When our parents were hospitalized, and I was the one rushing back and forth between home and the hospital, he didn't know. These past 2 years, after every failed attempt to conceive, I bore the pressure from both families, the pitiful stares, the probing questions. He knew nothing. Love made me shoulder everything, swallowing it all alone. And yet Daniel said that without Ashley, he wouldn't have made it. I laughed, a dry, bitter laugh echoing inside the silent car. Turns out I wasn't as heartbroken as I thought I'd be. Not even enough to argue with him, to unleash the anger. I couldn't be bothered anymore. Act 4. I didn't go home that night. I booked a hotel room, took a shower, then lay on the bed. My mind foggy, as if lost in a thick mist. The cold white sheets rubbed against my skin, a reminder of the emptiness surrounding me. In the middle of the night, my phone buzzed. Daniel was calling. He must have returned to the apartment and found I wasn't there. "Did you go home already?" he asked. Without waiting for an answer, he continued, "I'll be back this week." "Let's talk about the divorce. If you have any requests, just say them. Don't tell my parents yet." The call ended. I sat there, gripping the phone tightly, his coldness sweeping through like a gust of wind, jolting me awake, but also leaving me numb. The next day, I didn't go home. I went straight to the hospital. The tears I'd held back all night finally fell when I scheduled the procedure. The surgery was set for next week. The child I had longed for, the joy I had planned to share with Daniel, had come at the worst possible time. As I stepped out of the hospital, my phone buzzed again. Daniel's mom was calling. "Emma, sweetheart, are you home?" Her voice was warm, casual, like she had no idea about the crack between me and her son. "Your dad made chicken soup and fresh biscuits. We're bringing them over." I sat in the car, crying silently, uncontrollably, choking on sobs I couldn't voice. She kept talking, gently reminding me of things. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and whispered, "Okay, thank you." When I got home, John and Mary Thompson were already busy in the kitchen, the smell of chicken soup filling the space. I greeted them briefly, then slipped into the bedroom. How hard could long-distance love really be? Daniel's father had been in the military, and his mother raised him alone for years while he was away. How did they manage? I asked myself, but no answer came. After they left, I curled up on the sofa, my eyes drifting across the room. Daniel's words from the night before rang out again, each sentence hitting like a hammer to the chest. "Emma, it's not that I changed, it's that we both did," he said flatly, like it was an undeniable truth. "You're so calculating now. It's suffocating. But Ashley's different. She's sweet, innocent. A cupcake makes her happy for half the day." I nearly laughed in disbelief, but all that rose up was bitterness. Calculating? I won't deny it. Through 4 years of college, we lived off my stipend. His father was in the military, money was tight, but love is expensive. I saved every penny, fulfilled all his wants. After we married, it was Daniel who suggested we use a joint account. Rent, car payments, gifts. I tracked every cent, thinking it would help us build a better life. But reality slapped me in the face. Daniel said he once loved me, but once was all it ever was. Something had crept in and spoiled our love. I looked at him, didn't argue, only asked, "When did you and Ashley start?" He pressed his lips together, didn't answer, but his eyes flashed with irritation, as if I was digging into something that no longer mattered. He misunderstood, thought I was trying to hold on. That's why he called at midnight, reminding me we were already on the path to divorce. I wasn't heartbroken, just bitter, like the taste of cold coffee left in the cup. Our wedding photo from 6 years ago still sat in the center of the living room, glaring back at me. I walked over, took the frame down. A piece of paper slipped out, floating gently to the floor. I bent down to pick it up, but when I saw Daniel's handwriting, my fingers froze. I laughed, confused, bitter. 6 years ago, to marry me, he wrote every word himself, promises that burned with sincerity and made me believe he'd love me forever. During the first 2 years of long-distance marriage, he'd sneak home 2, 3 times a week, pat my head and smile. I can't rest knowing I've got a wife waiting at home. Later, even after his promotion and packed schedule, he still made it home every Friday, deposited money into our joint account, forwarded credit card statements directly to my email. I never doubted his love, but trust is like sand in a glass jar. Once shattered, you can't gather it back. I folded the paper and sat in silence for a long time, like I was burying the past 10 years. The doorbell rang, snapping me back to the present. I had packed all of Daniel's belongings into cardboard boxes, everything folded neatly, the same way he'd erased me from his apartment. I called a moving service, asked the driver to deliver it all to where he was staying. At 8 p.m., the delivery was made. My phone rang. Daniel's voice came through, sharp and angry. "Emma, what the hell are you doing? You boxed up all my stuff and sent it here. What's that supposed to mean?" He was, practically shouting, his voice shrill, like I was the one in the wrong. I froze for a second, then hung up without a word. What could I possibly mean? He cheated. He wanted the divorce, so the one who had to pack up and leave my life, of course, was him. Saturday noon, the doorbell rang nonstop. Through the camera screen, I saw Daniel standing at the door, his face tight with irritation, eyebrows furrowed. Beside him, Ashley placed her hand on his arm, whispering something, trying to comfort him. I froze, unable to believe he had the audacity to bring her here, right to my doorstep, to discuss the divorce. That shamelessness stung even worse than the moment I'd caught them in bed. He rang the bell a few more times. Finally, my phone lit up. "Emma, did you change the locks?" Daniel snapped. "We're not even divorced yet." Don't be unreasonable. So all the sweetness from before had been fake, and now that there was no more love, he didn't even bother hiding how nasty he could be. I lay on the spa bed, holding the phone a bit farther from my ear, as if trying to push his voice out of my world. "Oh, so you do remember we're not divorced yet?" I replied, voice cold, sharp. The first time I'd ever spoken to him like that. "And yet you brought the woman you're seeing here. What exactly is that supposed to mean?" My best friend lying beside me gave me a thumbs up, eyes glowing with approval. On the other end of the call, Daniel went silent, clearly at a loss for words. On the camera feed, I saw him turn off the speaker, eyes flicking up to meet the door camera, like he knew I was watching. Ashley gently tugged at his sleeve, her face pale. He raised the phone to his ear again, this time sounding more annoyed. "Emma, you don't have to say things like that." "Ashley isn't a mistress," I laughed, a dry, mocking sound that rang out in the quiet spa room. I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I told him to meet me at the nearest coffee shop. My best friend offered to come, but I shook my head. "It's okay," I said, soft but firm. "It's just a divorce, after all." Daniel parked on the side of the road. Ashley didn't get out. She sat in the passenger seat, leaning close to the window, her eyes scanning the cafe and landing on me. Just for a second, but it was enough for me to see the anxiety in her gaze. Then she looked away, and the window slowly rolled up, as if to hide her from me. Daniel walked in, his gray dress shirt crisp, his face expressionless. He sat down across from me and slid the divorce agreement across the wooden table. Quick, businesslike, like finalizing a transaction. "Take a look," he said evenly. "If you're not happy with anything, tell me. I'll have the lawyer revise it." I glanced through the document. Dense words, cold tone, reason for divorce, irreconcilable differences, assets split 50-50. I pushed it back toward him and looked straight at a face that was once so familiar, now no more than a stranger's. No trace remained of the man who used to hold my hand and promise forever. I took a sip of coffee, the bitterness sinking down my throat, and after a long pause, I asked quietly, "Do you remember what you promised me before we got married?" He answered instantly, without hesitation. "Emma, I really don't love you anymore." His voice was steady, but his brow tightened, fingers tapping nervously on the table like he was holding something back. "Can we just separate peacefully? At least for the sake of 10 years together, let's not make this harder than it has to be." "Make it harder?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Daniel, I never made things hard for you," I said. "I just want to know, do your words still mean anything? If not, then surely the paper you wrote still does, doesn't it?" He froze, his eyes narrowing. "What are you getting at?" I pulled out a copy of the letter that had fallen from our wedding photo frame and slid it in front of him. Those handwritten lines, bold strokes from 6 years ago, now looked like an accusation. "I'm not showing you the original," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But based on what you wrote, this car, the house, and all our savings, they're all mine." He stared at the paper, his face slowly flushing red, veins pulsing at his temples. He jumped up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Emma, do you even hear yourself?" he growled, each word bitten out. "You and your damn calculations. I'm sick of it." I should have been hurt, but I wasn't. What I felt was a strange sense of relief. "Daniel, this isn't about being calculating," I said, locking eyes with him. "This is about being responsible for what you said and for what you did." He made that promise. If he betrayed me, he'd walk away with nothing. And now he calls that calculating? He rubbed his forehead, silent for a long while before muttering, "Emma, this is exactly why I stopped loving you. Ashley would never act like this. She knows how to yield and adapt." He stormed out, his footsteps heavy, leaving me sitting there, watching his retreating back through the cafe window. I laughed. Laughed until tears streamed down my face. Yield and adapt? It's not that I didn't know how. I knew all too well. And that's exactly why, when I saw that love and marriage had rotted to the core, I chose to walk away before it was too late. 6 years ago, when Daniel wrote that commitment letter, he never imagined it would turn out to be the bullet aimed at himself. But now it was, pointed directly at him. And the way his expression twisted in panic, it was almost funny. He could chase after his dazzling love story all he wanted. I had no objection. But me? I just asked that he honor what he once promised, the very words that made me believe our love would last forever. He had no right to object. Leaving the cafe, I went to the lawyer's office, the one my best friend had recommended, a small building with frosted glass doors and a gleaming brass sign. I didn't have much evidence of Daniel's affair, just a voice recording, a few photos, and that old written promise. But I didn't want to drag it out with him. I just wanted to end it, clean and final, the way he had ended our 10 years. In the office, sunlight streamed through the window, lighting up the glossy wooden desk. The lawyer, young and about my age, sat across from me, his thin-rimmed glasses sliding slightly down the bridge of his nose as he listened to the recording. "I played it." Daniel's voice came through, dry, devoid of guilt, talking about the first time he met Ashley, how she drew him in, how he no longer had to pretend to love me. Every word felt like a knife, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed that the love I had once believed in had died long ago. The lawyer frowned, fingers tapping lightly on the desk, eyes focused, but he said nothing, just listened. I slid the written commitment toward him, a copy of the page that had fallen from our wedding photo frame. He picked it up and skimmed it, his brows gradually relaxing, the corners of his mouth lifting into a faint smile. "Let's give this a try." "The case isn't too complicated," he said with quiet confidence. "The opposing party already admitted to infidelity and even offered compensation. This pre-marriage agreement is essentially a loyalty contract, He placed his own fingerprint here, didn't he? I nodded. Yes. He pressed it himself on our wedding day. My voice was steady, but the memories tore open, flooding back in waves I couldn't stop. 6 years ago, Daniel and I had just graduated, and our love burned so brightly. We just wanted to be together forever. We sat down with both families to talk about the wedding. Everyone wanted a grand celebration, but I declined. We don't need that, I told my parents, my voice soft but firm. Just something simple and warm. We'll cover the costs ourselves. I just wanted both families to be happy, without financial pressure. I trusted Daniel, believed our future would be radiant, that no one would ever change. I never touched a cent of the wedding fund. Quietly, I returned all of it to John and Mary Thompson, Daniel's parents. He was moved, eyes glowing, as he held my hand and whispered that I was the most incredible woman. On our wedding day, in front of all our guests, he solemnly wrote that commitment. His pen glided across the paper, the handwriting bold and confident. He said that maybe he couldn't give me a wealthy life just yet, but he would try. He said his future would always include me. He said everything he had would also be mine. When I got home, John and Mary Thompson were already waiting at the door. They rarely visited on weekend evenings, and my heart sank with a sudden uneasy feeling. I quickened my pace, trying to force a smile. Mom, Dad, what brings you here? Have you been waiting long? I hurried to take the bags from their hands, the scent of homemade cookies drifting from the paper bag, mingling with the smell of yogurt and fresh fruit. I opened the door. The passcode had already been changed. Mary Thompson looked at me, hesitation in her eyes, her lips pressed tightly together, like she was weighing something. It took her a while before she finally spoke, her voice soft but sharp. Emma, are you hiding something from us? I froze, my hand tightening around the bag handle. Even though Daniel and I were on the verge of divorce, we had agreed not to tell either side of the family until everything was settled. Of course not, I replied, trying to keep my tone light. John and Mary Thompson had always treated me like their own daughter. I never learned how to cook, so every few days, they'd call to check in, sometimes mailing boxes of homemade pastries, and my fridge was always stocked with fruit and yogurt they brought. Before, every call with them was full of laughter. I'd joke to make them smile, tell silly little stories. But today, sitting on the sofa, facing their searching gazes, I wanted nothing more than to run. Marriage isn't just between two people. Neither is divorce. Mary Thompson spoke up, her tone gentle but firm. Did Daniel and you get into a fight? A pregnancy is something important. Why didn't you tell us? Her words landed like a blade, making my heart skip a beat and my response lag a second. I panicked, about to deny it. I didn't. But she cut me off, her eyes still kind, but leaving no room to dodge. This morning, I happened to run into Miss Wilder. She told me, "You've been seeing her for your prenatal visits, haven't you?" From the moment I found out I was pregnant to the moment I decided to terminate it, only a day had passed. I had chosen a different hospital for the surgery, thinking I could keep it all hidden. But I forgot. Pregnancy isn't something you can hide forever. Miss Wilder, my ultrasound doctor, was a longtime friend of Mary's. I lowered my head, eyes drifting over the carpet, and said flatly, "There's no reason. I just don't want to keep it." The words were light, but they weighed on my chest like stone. At 10 p.m., I sat cross-legged on the sofa. John and Mary's eyes locked on me, their expressions dark. They had driven over the moment they found out I was pregnant. The joy that should have been radiant now, clouded by something heavy. The air in the living room was suffocating, like even the sounds had been swallowed by the silence. They wanted to comfort me, but didn't know how, so they just sat there, saying nothing. Maybe they'd already guessed something was wrong between me and Daniel, but didn't dare ask. Mary finally broke the silence, her voice soft. "Emma, did Daniel argue with you?" "I'll call him right now," she dialed, her finger trembling slightly, eyes determined. I didn't stop her. I just sat there, gripping the edge of my sleeve, waiting. The phone rang for a long, long time, then a sweet female voice answered on the other end. Mary flinched. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the carpet with a heavy thud. The screen stayed lit, showing the call was still connected. I glanced at it, the corner of my mouth curling into a bitter, mocking smile. Well done. I didn't even need to explain anymore. Daniel, like me, had memorized all our family numbers. No contact name needed. Ashley's voice rang out, clear, unmistakable, just like those red heels that day, bold, glaring, undeniable. John shot up from the sofa and stormed out of the room, shoulders tense like he was holding back rage. Mary scrambled to pick up the phone, looked at me, her eyes full of shock, then chased after him. I was left sitting in the living room, alone with my own parents, their expressions growing darker by the second, as if the truth had just shattered open in front of them. I shrugged, suddenly feeling strangely relieved, as though an invisible weight had been lifted. The surgery is scheduled for next week, Wednesday. John and Mary Thompson flew out that very night to the city where Daniel worked, as if their anger and disappointment had pushed them past the point of hesitation. I pictured them standing in front of him, voices sharp, eyes heavy, probably giving him the scolding of a lifetime. Proof of that came at 4 a.m. when my phone rang. Daniel's voice exploded through the speaker, full of rage. Emma, now I see just how disgusting you really are. All this time you couldn't get pregnant, and now, right when we're getting divorced, you suddenly are? What a coincidence, huh? Are you doing this just to get more money? You really are shameless. He was nearly shouting, every word like a stone hurled at me. Let me make this clear. I will divorce you. I leaned back on the sofa, my breathing slowed, and my fingers slid over the speaker button. His voice vanished, swallowed by silence. I ended the call and let the phone fall softly onto my lap as the screen faded to black. He was right. After all this time, I had never gotten pregnant. And now, of all moments. I placed a hand on my stomach, the ache spreading, not because of Daniel's accusations, but because of the child I never had a chance to tell him about. I wasn't heartbroken over his betrayal. Love, it turns out, is that fragile. But this child, the joy I had once been so eager to share, had now become a deep, unhealing wound. Turning my head, I saw my parents standing in the hallway outside my bedroom, their faces filled with pain, as if they had heard everything. My mother's shoulders trembled. My father stood frozen, gripping the doorframe. I couldn't sleep, and neither could they. Mom came over, gently sat beside me, her warm hand soothing my shoulder, her voice soft but choked. It's okay, sweetheart. Next week, we'll go to the hospital with you. And when you're feeling better, we'll take you on a trip. You've always wanted to travel, haven't you? I nodded, eyes burning, tears rolling down silently. In the end, only my parents had stayed by my side, unchanging, like a warm light in the middle of a storm. My phone rang again. Mary Thompson. Her voice was hoarse, broken up by sobs. I'm so sorry, Emma. Just this once. Could you forgive him? On the other end, I could hear John Thompson yelling, scolding Daniel. But I only smiled, bitter, faint. Betrayal happens once, or over and over. Daniel never needed my forgiveness. What he wanted was love, not from me, but from Ashley, from what he called innocence, purity. The next morning, the quiet living room suddenly felt crowded when Daniel came back, dragged there by John and Mary. I stepped out of the bedroom just in time to lock eyes with him. There was no warmth in his gaze anymore, only contempt, cold like the eyes of a stranger. He stood by the entrance, shoulders stiff, facing his own parents. John pointed at him, fuming. What were you thinking, huh? Daniel, do you have to disappoint us to this degree? Mary, eyes glistening with tears, hit him on the shoulder again and again, her hand shaking. Say something, Daniel. But when Ashley's name came up, his eyes flickered, lips tightened, and he finally said, Ashley isn't the one who ruined this. Mom, watch how you talk about her. I sat on the sofa, arms folded, watching the scene like a sad little play. I never imagined 10 years together would end in such unfamiliarity. I spoke up, my voice flat, slicing through the tension. Mom, Dad, you should go home. I'll handle the divorce directly with Daniel's lawyer. I raised a hand, stopping John and Mary's anger, my eyes steady, even as exhaustion hollowed me out. After all that yelling, I was tired. They should be too. I stood up and walked straight into the kitchen. The warm scent of pumpkin soup filled the air, pulling me back to happier days. My parents, after a long night, seemed calmer. They acted like nothing had happened, bustling around the kitchen as usual. Dad gently lifted the lid of the pot, steam rising, then turned to me with a soft smile. Hey, I made you pumpkin soup and toasted bread. Your favorite, and Act 9. There's nothing noble about infidelity in marriage. I didn't make a scene, didn't let the whole world know, and that was the last bit of respect I chose to give the 10 years I'd had with Daniel. But he clearly didn't value it. He denied the commitment letter he had written himself. The negotiation between him and my lawyer became strained, difficult. I had just finished the surgery, my body drained, my mind blank, lying in a hospital bed. My phone buzzed. My lawyer calling, his voice steady but clearly frustrated. He doesn't want to settle, Emma. He insists the commitment letter isn't legally significant. I clenched the phone. My breathing slowed. If he won't settle, then take it to court, I said, voice cold and firm. I'm not backing down. He will be held to what he promised. I hung up and leaned back, the harsh white hospital lights glaring down at me, as if trying to expose every wound I'd tried to hide. But when I looked up, I froze. Ashley was standing at the door of my hospital room. Her eyes were full of smugness. The corner of her lips curled in a taunting smirk, like she was declaring victory. My chest tightened, brows furrowed. I couldn't understand why she was here, why mistresses always needed to show up in front of the wife to flaunt their presence. I remembered how, right after Daniel had been dragged home by John and Mary Thompson, Ashley sent me a friend request on Instagram. Daniel said he only truly felt love when he was with me. He's been sick of you for a long time. I didn't need her to tell me that. I already knew. I chose divorce not because she pushed me to, but because I no longer wanted to hold on to a marriage that had long since rotted. And yet there she was, standing at the hospital room door, as if needing to confirm she had won. My parents, sitting beside my bed, sensed something was off. My mom turned her head, puzzled. Who's that? Do you know her? I looked at Ashley, then shook my head, my voice low but clear enough to carry through the room. Not really. Just the girl Daniel's been seeing. The words were calm, but cut clean through the quiet. There were a few others in the room, and all eyes turned toward the door, landing on Ashley, full of contempt, like she was a stain. The family of the patient in the bed nearest the door stood up, walked over quickly, and slammed the door shut, bang, and Ashley vanished behind it. That's the thing. When you're the mistress, all you'll ever get is scorn. Act 10. When I was discharged from the hospital, the moment I pushed open the door, my best friend rushed over, eyes glowing, holding a steaming cup of coffee. Good news! She shouted excitedly. Your court date with Daniel might be moved up. She flopped down onto the sofa, voice firm. I checked with the lawyer. You're going to win, for sure. But have you gone over the joint assets carefully? I nodded. The house, the car, everything we bought after getting married was fully documented. Daniel's salary was transferred regularly into the joint account, and he sent me his payslips like clockwork, a habit kept flawlessly intact. Even while seeing Ashley, he left no loose ends. If he wasn't such a good actor, how could I not have noticed a thing all this time? My best friend widened her eyes, pointing at me in warning. What about all the stuff he bought for her? You need to claim that too, I shrugged, my voice calm. Those gifts weren't worth much anyway. But I knew what needed to be reclaimed. I would reclaim. Fortunately, Ashley Miller, after connecting with me on Instagram, had a habit of showing off. Every gift Daniel gave her, a necklace, handbag, silk dress, she posted proudly with smug captions. I screenshotted everything and sent it to my lawyer. He replied with just one line. Got it? Don't worry, while waiting for the hearing, John and Mary Thompson visited multiple times. I thought they'd try to convince me to back down, settle the divorce peacefully, avoid escalation. But no, they quietly rang the bell, waited for me to open the door, even though they still remembered the code. They brought pastries, yogurt, just like the old days. Eyes full of sorrow, but never saying a word about Daniel. Every time they came, I felt a little lighter, reminded that some people still genuinely cared. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom air felt suffocating, the white ceiling lights casting harsh shadows on Daniel's tense face. He didn't deny the affair, but still turned around to look at Ashley sitting in the back row, eyes full of deep emotion, like some self-appointed warrior for love. John and Mary, seated not far away, began to show their disappointment. John, a soldier who'd lived by principle all his life, gripped the armrest tightly, unable to believe his son had become this person. Daniel stood at the podium, voice cold. Yes, I wrote that agreement on our wedding day, but it has no legal effect. I don't acknowledge it. I looked at him, the man who used to mean the world to me, now as unfamiliar as a stranger. Then I pulled up the wedding video, carefully stored on my phone. The big screen showed a young, glowing Daniel, holding a mic and reading every word of the agreement in front of the wedding hall. I allow everyone here to hold me accountable. In this life, I'll love only you, his voice rang out. If I ever betray you, everything, money, cars, house, will be yours. No one forced him to say it. No one forced him to write it. The courtroom fell silent, with only John Thompson's long sigh breaking the air. My lawyer stood up and explained that the agreement, with his signature and witnesses, was legally valid. The house and car loans had been paid off 2 years ago. Most of the savings in the joint account were managed by me. The court ruled in my favor. Daniel was furious, face flushed, wanting to appeal. But John and Mary immediately stood up, John's voice shaking. That's enough. Don't disappoint your parents any further. Daniel looked at them, scoffed, then turned to me, tone dripping with sarcasm. Emma, do you even realize how much you reek of money? To you, there's nothing but houses, cars, and savings. You honestly disgust me. Funny. I had the house, the car, the savings, all things he had promised me. Why would I need a love that had already crumbled and left nothing but pain? I looked at him and said nothing. He took Ashley's hand and walked out to the parking lot without looking back. I called out, Daniel? He stopped, turned his head, eyes glaring. Make sure the car's washed before you return it, I said, voice slow but firm. According to the ruling, he had a month to transfer ownership. Ashley, beside him, silently let go of his hand and hesitated, maybe realizing the love she'd chased was falling apart. I glanced at my best friend. We both stifled a laugh. Daniel could believe in his true love with Ashley, but in a world built on material ambitions, it was nothing more than dust. The court ordered him to return the gifts he gave Ashley, and he begrudgingly agreed to compensate. I didn't argue further. I simply pulled out my phone and scrolled back to one of Ashley's messages. Without love, marriage is just dust. It's bound to fall apart, my best friend laughed so hard she nearly fell over. She was right. Love without financial grounding is just dust, and Daniel's love crumbled faster than we imagined. I heard Ashley had a few fights with him afterward, even threatened to break up when she realized she got nothing from the ruling. Daniel dragged it out to the last possible day before completing the transfer of the house and car. The divorce was finalized on an early morning, as the first light of day slipped through the office window, shining over the desk covered in signatures and official stamps. Daniel stood there, near the doorway leading to the hall, his leather shoes polished to a shine, but his shoulders slightly slumped. He hesitated, hands in his pockets, eyes glancing at me, then at the floor, then back to me. Finally he spoke, his voice hoarse, hesitant, like he was afraid of something. If I said, "I regret it," would you forgive me? He looked up, eyes glinting with a faint flicker of hope. I mean it, Emma. I I think I really do regret it. I stood still, fingers lightly tightening around my handbag. His words passed over me like a breeze, touching me, but not enough to move me. I looked at him, not with scorn, but with the quiet relief of someone who's already walked through the storm. Just before leaving, he suddenly grabbed my hand. Emma, you're colder than I thought, he said, voice trembling, like he was searching for some kind of explanation. How could you just walk away from 10 years? Just end it like that, without even giving me a chance to fix it? I pulled my hand back, gently but firmly, and looked him straight in the eyes. He didn't understand, and maybe he never would. From the moment those red high heels appeared outside our apartment, from the second I heard Ashley's voice on the phone, from the way he shielded her in front of me, everything had drawn a line we could never cross again. Just 3 short months, from the day I discovered his betrayal to the moment it all ended. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't argue. I stayed calm, like an outsider watching it unfold, because deep down I knew, no matter how much it hurt, we could never go back. I stepped out of the office, the soft morning sunlight resting gently on my shoulders, like it was trying to soothe all the invisible scars. I wasn't in a rush. My steps were slow along the sidewalk, dry leaves crunching softly underfoot like a quiet melody. When I got home, I opened the windows, letting in the cool breeze to carry away the smell of smoke and the memories of Daniel. I made a cup of coffee, the steam curling around my fingers, and sat on the sofa, my gaze resting on the wedding photo that had been replaced with a small painting. A sunflower field glowing golden beneath a bright blue sky, a reminder of new days ahead. I was no longer the Emma who clung to the balcony railing in pain, who clutched ultrasound reports with trembling hands. I was the Emma of quiet mornings, of warm tea, of dreams to travel with my parents, of a future I would write for myself. Love may scatter like dust, but me, I had found myself again, as free as the breeze drifting through the open window, gentle, but unstoppable. And sometimes, letting go isn't losing. It's giving yourself a chance to truly live, to love yourself, and to walk forward on a path lit brightly by the sun.